2026, the one and only day of this day that there will ever be. Hmm. Welcome. Welcome to my home. Welcome to hearing my voice and sharing space here together. Um, I want to acknowledge the outfit that I have on today, that sometimes I am like business instead of business in the front, party in the back. I'm like business on the top, party down below. Because I have sweatpants on today. Woo. So this is my work outfit. Um yeah, I find that it's a cool way to like fit different aspects of my day and my life. I can show up in this like professional look on the top half of my body for a video, for a Zoom, and also be comfortable. Anyway, just wanted to bring you in to my authenticity with that little share. I find it fascinating how the little things that we can share with each other are so connecting. And one of those things is what's real about what I'm wearing today? What's real about my hair? What's real about my face? What's real about this body? What's real about my thoughts? What's real about the sensations that I'm feeling inside me? What's real about the emotions that I might be noticing right now? Being able to share about these little the minutia of the individual is both connecting with self and connecting with others. And as I'm learning more and more about how shame lives in the body as a result of absorbing a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You, written by John Bradshaw, a book that I'm absorbing via audio, and that just saying it out loud is bringing tears to me, and the impact that it seems to be having on me from an awareness point of view, and awareness for humanity at large, but also for me and my own human process of integration. And the the thing that is connecting what I'm talking about with shame and what I'm talking about with the minutia is this tragic experience that occurs in childhood for so many humans, which is a disconnection from what is true. This is the result of intergenerational shame fused into identity. And it causes a disconnect from the person to themselves. And as the person disconnects from themselves, they're existing from false identity. And that false identity is the safety net to stay safe, safety net, stay safe, to stay connected, to stay relevant to the caregiver connection that is vital for a Homo sapien for quite a few years. I've heard like up to age 7, really up to age 10, when a human can really go off and kind of be on their own and like could be able to survive. It's such a long period of time compared to any other mammal, any other species. And so our dynamic and in the way that it informs the individual species of human is massive because it spans over such a long period of time. Um, but also just the way that it affects our relationship with self. I mean, that's the ultimate thing. So what happens is that the parts of us get um, they get shut down. So I've talked about this before: impulse, emotion, thought, different things about who we are, who is my unique expression as a human, get shaped, shifted, curated, um, adapted, shifted, patterned, et cetera, all these different ways so that we can maintain whatever cohesiveness with our caregiver that we can maintain, because the young human only knows that that is their lifeline. And so all of us do this to some degree. Even in really healthy environments, there often is some sort of system influence on the young human. In this, especially in the Western world that we live in, there are various examples of different tribes across the globe that right now in this present day have a very different way of maintaining the autonomy of the individual from birth on, so that that individual isn't disowning certain parts of themselves. So, in that disowning, the intergenerational cycle of it is coming because of an identity that has been fused with shame. This was a really interesting detail from the book. One of the first expressions of shame, and this shame is not all bad, it becomes toxic when it becomes fused with identity. When we can't distinguish, we don't distinguish, oh, I made a mistake and I feel bad, and now and I know I'm not bad. I just know I did something and I feel bad about it, but I can recover from that. It's an emotional experience that can get moved through. This is healthy shame. It's totally healthy, totally normal, totally natural. The toxic version of shame, which is not non is not atypical. It's actually a very I think it's we have an epidemic of addiction, and all addiction relates to this identity fused shame. So identity fused shame says, not, oh, I made a mistake and it's okay, I can feel this feeling and then I can move through it, and I know that I'm still whole and I'm still worthy and I'm still an okay human being. The shame fused identity says, I am wrong, I am bad, me, my being is wrong, me, my being is bad, I am a bad person, I am not worthy, I am an unworthy person. It becomes deeply, deeply embedded in the identity of self. And then all of these other false selves become generated as a result of the protective need to survive. So the true authentic self gets pushed down, and then the false selves get created outside of the authentic self in order to continue um, existing in the world. And these false selves can become so much identified with what we understand ourselves to be as me, as I, as this is just me, that there's a there's a almost a it's not impossible, because all of these things can be shifted. I want to say that right now. There's so much support for any of these things to be moved through, but it does take choice to decide that that's what's wanted. And usually for a lot of us, that comes because we realize that the addictive tendencies that we've been choosing for so many years are really creating a like a threat to our happiness, a threat to our feeling of contentment, a threat to our desire to maybe even want to live, to the extreme end of it. So those patterns can become so detrimental in the way that they threat our human existence, that then we might recognize the interest and make the choice to commit to discovering who I really am, which can be a massive unraveling process for for many people. depending on the extent to which you've been impacted by the shamefulness that has been outsourced to you when you were getting raised, when you were growing up. So I understand this is a very delicate and sensitive topic, and I don't want to speak to it in a way that sounds flippant. It's as you saw me get emotional, it really does feel like this is the most important awareness building thing that there could be for any one of us, is to be aware of how shame lives in the human body mind, in the human psyche, and that it we can go into the self and move these things through, but it exists in many of us in really subtle ways or not so subtle ways. I just discovered my own version of how shame lives in me, and I was completely unaware that that was even existing in me. For me, it was a message that landed in me about being perfect. And if I was the second child of four children, s- I had an older brother, and then me, and then a sister, and then a younger brother. And the way that I came to understand my worth was through doing everything right. It was through doing everything perfect. It was through not ruffling the feathers of anything, through making sure that my mom was happy. Um, and then later messaging in adulthood. And so this showed up in so many parts of my life. It showed up academically. I mean, I was highly motivated to perform well in school. I performed very well in school. I had a natural aptitude for academics, so I did perform well. So it kind of reinforced that perfectionism. I also performed well physically, so that reinforced it too. Um, and so, but deep down, there was this piece of me that was like, if I'm not perfect, then I'm not worthy of various things. Love, that's the biggest one. And that's everything, right? What else are we here for? Love and connection. If I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy of love. If I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy of success. If I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy of attention and acknowledgement. Those were all of the ways I had to be perfect in order to receive attention, acknowledgement, care, love, and success. And so my meaning got derived through that, and the nuance how that ultimately ended up showcasing itself, especially in intimate relationship for me, was that because I had to be perfect, others had to be perfect too. And so I, for myself, developed this very um, deeply thorough, deeply precise, deeply fastidious, meticulous way of being with almost everything, except for maybe my hair. My hair and my clothing were always a little bit on the less cared about side. But I think even probably there's something in there that's related to the pattern where if I put too much attention to it, it might actually like trigger the shame that I feel. So if I just don't pay too much attention to it, then I don't have to feel the discomfort. I do think there's some truth with that now that I'm speaking to that out loud right now. Um, but the big thing for me was that because I held myself to this standard, then I also insidiously held everyone around me to this same standard. And what that did is it created this very narrow way that a person could exist in order for me to feel safe in myself alongside them, because it was all projection. if they weren't showing up with the same thoroughness and precision and care and depth and awareness, then that would trigger my own need to be those things that kept me safe, that kept me in this prevention of feeling somehow at risk of losing connection, of losing a sense of my worth, which was patterned on this dynamic. So in another way of describing that, it made it so that there was a narrow aperture for human variability, for human mistake, for human process, for the people who were closest to me. It was like I had a standard so high for myself, and everyone else needed to be there too. And if they weren't, it was like them, but really it was me. So, the words grace, compassion, spaciousness for human process, um, gentle curiosity, all of these things that I find myself really easily able to access in a professional relationship that were harder for me to access in a personal, intimate relationship. It's really vulnerable for me to say all of that because the vulnerability to acknowledging the shame feels shameful, right? So it feels scary for me to admit that and acknowledge that about myself. And yet, I know that it's the only way, that I have to be able to stay devoted to truth, even if it feels uncomfortable. So that's why I'm sharing this here. There are so many ways that we can drop into our own being, and I just highly recommend this book. Again, the title is Healing the Shame That Binds You. The first part is all about explaining what healthy shame versus toxic shame is and what it looks like, what toxic shame looks like, how it shows up. M- a myriad of examples that were so incredibly helpful. And the second part is how to work with the toxic shame, how to actually like move through this, uncover it, discover it, compassionately work with it. Amazing. This like part two of this book is like filled with so many incredible resources and examples and actual practices that you can try with yourself if it feels safe, depending on the extent of your trauma related to a shame fused identity and your upbringing and your attachment dynamics with caregivers. It might be so intense that it actually feels um, it's too intense to do on one's own. And so finding professional support is really, really important. Someone who you can trust because you're dropping in, the process is dropping into yourself in a way that perhaps you've never done before. It's dropping into your vulnerability with yourself, your true emotions related to things that have had to be shut down. And that's what creates the body freeze. That's what creates the body tension. That's what creates the anxiety. All of these false identities are just a shell to guard the body from feeling itself. And so, in order to move out of this shame fused identity into our authentic self, we actually have to feel. We actually have to allow ourselves and permit ourselves to feel. So being with someone who we can feel that professional, safe, supportive environment to express the real deep stuff is it's essential. It can't not happen. That is the process. It's a reclamation of the deeper pieces that have been shut down for years, decades. But this book has, yeah, just so many examples of how to at least lightly like engage those things, or if anything, just be aware that they might be something that you could do in a professional setting. I'm listening to this book on Spotify. I know it can be found as an audio elsewhere. It was published in, I think, 2011. It also includes so many other resources in the book itself. So I highly recommend, like I said, I really do believe it's the most important book I've ever absorbed in my entire life. And I've read a lot of pretty amazing books. So in the first 30 minutes, that felt real. And here I am, I'm probably an hour and a half shy of finishing the book. And I already know I'm going to immediately start to listen to it a second time. And I still feel that that's true, that it is the most important book I've ever absorbed in my life. So check it out. Help yourself, help yourself. You are not wrong. You are not bad. We are all doing our best. We can all move through these things as a collective, as a human community. Your life is precious, and you are worthy of feeling alive and free and safe inside your own being, your authentic being, and letting the patterns, the addictive thought patterns, the addictive somatic patterns, the addictive physical or sexual patterns, letting those letting those become a part of your movement into a letting go into what is going to actually feel so much freer and better. So I hope this was helpful. I'll include a link to the book in the comments of this video. And if you are curious to talk more about shame with me, please reach out. I would love to support you in talking through this topic and to support you in moving through your false identities if you desire and you feel a safety with me. I would love to support you. Thank you. Until 2 weeks from now, see you next time.